I just want to jump right in, and we want to just start with how to get a proper in-ear mix. And this is really important. We've just kind of noticed, like, just throughout time, just kind of watching people do, like, their mixes and stuff that I'm noticing, like, oh, I know a way that they could definitely get a more effective mix that would help them just be able to play better because you can hear yourself better or whatever it is. So I want to just kind of start with a monitor mix is always for a purpose or a function. You're not necessarily here listening to like your favorite band. You're not listening to the CD of your favorite band. Like that's not the purpose of it. It's for a function and for a purpose only. Therefore, I know that doesn't sound exciting, but it then allows for you to do whatever you're doing better, which makes everything else more exciting for everyone out here anyways. So let's start with monitor mix pyramid. That's just kind of our dorky name that we kind of came up with. And so basically what we want to start with is you or your instrument. That's kind of the most important thing, right? So if you're a singer, you kind of need you, right? That's the most important part. The second most important part would be kind of the main supporting element to whatever your role is. So if you're a drummer or a vocalist or a guitar player, the main supporting element, the first one would be click. Everyone has to be on time, whether you're a singer or a drummer, everyone needs to be on time. And the click never loses time, therefore it is the most important reference for rhythm. And then the second one that would go along with click is just the guides. And anyone who's playing with the tracks, and you've played with tracks, you hear like that lady that's cueing us and guiding us. What would go along with the guides would just be the music director. And so whoever's directing, so whether down in Portland or in United or here, whoever's directing is also a very important key element to have. And these are all like non-negotiable elements that you have to put into your mix so that you have a proper mix.
Think of them as the grains in your food pyramid. That would be the base of our monitor pyramid.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is, never mind, tangent, not going to go there. And then the next piece, and this one, it's still a key element, and it's dependent on your mix, but drums would be another, just that key rhythm element that you have in. And I know sometimes I feel like you're a vocalist, you're like, well, I just don't want necessarily a ton of drums because of all the washing cymbals and stuff. But as far as like if you're a bass player, like drums are that main supporting element that you need to have because you need to hear the kick drum and you need to be tight with your drummer. And then same even with drummers, getting a little bit of drums, it then allows you to kind of play a little more sensitive if you need to. If you have zero drums, you're just like, oh, I'm going to smack the snot out of this because I can't hear it. Not that there's anything wrong with smacking the snot out of your drum, but... And then keys. In our context here, keys are a very important foundation thing to have within your mix because of all like the underscores that keys are doing. If you're a vocalist, keys are a good melody reference as well because a lot of the times if we were doing a down section or whatever, it kind of ends up being keys that's the one that's filling in there. And then there's what we were going to call candy / non-essentials. And that would be tracks are what first comes to mind. It was a very candy non-essential piece would just kind of be those tracks. They're nice to have. They have that little thing here and there where you're like, ooh, that was nice. It makes me feel like I'm really listening to a real song. But they're not always essential. And there's other things a part of this. So room mics and reverb can be kind of a candy non-essential piece as well. And I know vocalists are like, don't you dare say that. But it's true, because what happens if you start adding a little bit too much room mic and reverb is then your mix will kind of start to get kind of muddy, and you're going to lose some of the definition pretty much on everything. I mean, especially if you're adding room mics, you'll lose definition on everything. Like, all of a sudden that snare that was like, pa, 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 right in your face is now like, pa, pa, way over there. Therefore, it's just going to kind of create more muddy space, if that makes sense. So some of these candy non-essentials, it's important to be very light with them. Another candy non-essential, and this applies to, let's say you're a lead vocalist and lead guitar is playing. Lead guitar would be very candy non-essential to a lead vocalist because a lot of the times a lead guitar player might even be playing a kind of riff or part that's counter to what you're singing. And therefore, like, you're going to be hearing another melody, not really a purpose for you to hear that. Along with that is electric guitar in general, where it sits sonically, as far as like the frequencies and stuff where it sits, can eat up space where your vocal will be at. And so the more space that eats up, then the less space you have for your vocal to hear your vocal up front and center. So electric guitar, especially for vocalists, like I said, is a very kind of candy non-essential. But for a keyboard player, electric or lead guitar can be a lot more essential because a lot of times they're playing the riffs kind of together, or they're countering like keys and then lead guitar. So those kind of can go together. When I'm playing lead guitar, I'll get a pretty good amount of keys because I want to hear what they're doing and I don't want to step on their toes. So some of these supporting roles and non-essential roles can kind of differ according to your mix. So I want to then, let's go into kind of the parameters in which your mix will fit in. You have basically two parameters. You have up and down, so your level up or level down, and then you have left and right. So you have your left ear and right ear. Now, thankfully, here, in this context here, we have a stereo mix, so we get left and right. Now, you don't always get left and right. A lot of times you'll have what we call a mono mix, therefore it's just all center. So all your stuff is going to live just in that center space, and that's it. So you don't have the option to go left and right. So if you don't have that option, then the left and right parameters don't apply to you. But the up and down level does. So that's our first parameter that you can fit in, is up and down. So you guys know up here what we'll do is we'll always do finger up, finger down to get up and down. So for example, I'll use a bass player. A bass player, let's start with our up and down parameters. They're going to start with clicking drums. They're going to get that up, 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 way up. And then once they get to maybe, I don't know, let's say violin. There's a violin playing for that for some reason. To make space for the other things that are important, i.e. their bass and drums, they're going to turn violin down. Pretty basic, right? Well, now if we get into our left and right, I will fully use left and right as much as I can because once you open up all this space here, like, things just start to poke out. So I don't know, you guys maybe have experienced this up here, but you're like, you have something center, and then you're like, oh, can I get it up? And then you get it up, and you're like, okay, that's feeling good. Now can I get it to the right? And then you get it to the right, and you're like, whoa, it's way too loud. Has that ever happened to anyone, or have you ever noticed that happening? Because what happens is, like, when you have a lot of center information, as soon as you throw it out somewhere else where there's less information and there's less stuff happening, it appears to be louder because there's more space there for it to live in. And so then what is nice, obviously you're maybe putting two and two together. Once you kind of throw things in other spots, then you don't have to have it as loud either, which is good for your ears and for your hearing. So up here, we always take our music director, just that one, and we throw it usually hard left, or if the director's on that side of the stage, sometimes we'll throw it hard right just so it's not awkward. But throw it hard left because that'll be like, usually for most people, it might be the only thing living over here. And so as soon as I talk and something pokes out of nowhere, just over here, it's like, oh, wow, that's obvious to hear. Now, I'll do the same thing with if I have two electric guitar players, an acoustic player. What I'll take, because I don't want to just rage electric guitars down the center because I'm singing. And if I'm singing and I'm raging electric guitars down the center, all of a sudden, like, all that space is getting eaten up. So I'll take electric guitar, let's say he's on that side of the stage and that side, I'll poke them out to the left and right a little bit. All of a sudden, they're living in their own little space. I can then turn them down, and now, boom, my vocal is clear. There it is. There's nothing infringing on it. So that's just the basic up, down, left, right parameters that you kind of get to live in and use it. And that's all space that's usable, and it's good to use. Now, like I said, if you don't have a left and right stereo mix for your ears, well, you just get to live with everything down the center, and that's okay. But that's when your important main supporting elements, that's when they really become important, because that's what you want to focus on. And one thing for vocalists that I would really encourage you to start working towards as well is using less reverb on your vocal. And the reason I say that is I know it doesn't sound exciting. Like, the drier your vocal is, you're just like, bleh, and you're just like, oh, that sounds bad. But what you'll find is the drier your vocal will be, you'll tend to then hear everything on it. All the little like nuances of your voice and all the little mistakes. So therefore you're like, wow, like, okay, maybe I don't sound as good as I thought. And so it's actually a really good practice to do that, because then you'll just learn, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, if I put like a bunch of vocals with reverbs in my ears, I'm like, yes, this feels so good. And I'm like, yeah. But the more and more I practice to get away from that, all of a sudden I'm like, well, I don't actually miss it, and I don't really need it anymore. But now I'm hearing my vocal like literally right here, and I can hear every little thing, but I'm still like able to get into it because it just becomes normal. So it's like, it's not a thing that you just turn on, but you just become normal. It becomes normal to not hear the reverb. And honestly, at least here, if you use like the loaner ears, those in-ears have such good little ambient ports on them now that like it feels supernatural. Like, it's pretty crazy. Not supernatural, but like very natural. There we go. It feels very natural. You're almost like, sometimes I forget I have ears on, and I'm like, whoa, like, oh yeah, I have headphones on. And you can feel like you're in the room. And so, yeah, that's kind of some of the main thoughts and ideas of how to get a better monitor mix. Brian, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so kind of to piggyback off what he was saying, we kind of want to think of our monitor mix kind of like Japanese home design or like tiny house design, like only what is essential matters, because the goal is to reduce clutter, and then also to kind of like the real thing we should be asking ourselves is, what's the purpose of what we're doing? So not that like everything has to have a reason in life and like there's no fun, but like for monitor mixes, it's there as a tool. And so I'm not going to grab a funky tool because the color of that tool looks more fun to use than like the tool that's actually meant for the job. So like the things to ask yourself, what's the purpose of this? And so like the kind of 3 levels, the way I break it down in my mind as like the different food group pyramid things, is there's stuff I need to do my job. That's base 1. That's like the click. For me, I need ridiculous amounts of click, so much that like I think the last time I was up, the monitor engineer's like, I don't know if that's safe. I'm like, no, that's fine, or whatever. So for me, click, my vocal, my guitar, and keys, so I can get a pitch reference. Then things that other people who are doing what I'm doing is my second level. So that way I'm not stepping on other people's feet. That way I know kind of where I'm supposed to be. And then that third level is stuff that helps me feel like it's actually music. So I'm going to be real decisive on the things that make me feel like it's music. Like, I'm not going to use a ton of click or a ton of tracks, but I want a little bit so I feel like I'm actually playing music. I want a little bit of, some of the backing vocals that otherwise you might have completely out. I just want a little bit so I can feel like, oh, I'm part of a team. And those things are going to be different for everybody. But remember, it's all priorities. You're not going to not have yourself in your mix or put something else in your mix that's going to eat away from the space that you have to have for you. So that's kind of how I think of it, as baseline stuff I need to do my job. Second piece, stuff that other people who are doing what I'm doing so I don't step on their toes. And then third piece is things that make me feel like I'm actually contributing to art. So those are the kind of things. So with that paradigm that everything we're doing has a purpose, the purpose of reverb is actually not to make you feel like more comfortable. The purpose of reverb is to make sure you're on pitch. Because if I can hear my pitch against a time-shifted version of my pitch, I can tell where I'm drifting at. If you take away that reference, I don't know whether or not I'm drifting flat or drifting sharp. So the point of reverb in your mix is to help you stay in tune. It's not to make you feel good about your voice, like, because we're all trying to work through that. Like I need, and it's something that you get used to, it's just kind of like the first time you ever heard yourself on a mic, you're going to feel real awkward. I feel super awkward right now because I'm hearing a delayed version of my voice through a system. And so that's just like, it's just weird to hear yourself if you've not heard yourself. And you'll get used to that. Just like he said, you'll get used to not hearing reverb. But the point of reverb, it does have a purpose, and that purpose is to help you stay in tune. So if you understand that, then it's like, oh, I'm having pitch problems this morning, or I'm feeling like I'm just singing really flat or whatever. Maybe reverb is the right decision to kind of help bring that up. But like he's saying, mud is the enemy of the monitor mix. The other thing that's kind of useful to remember is that in your stereo field, you kind of also have the same dimensions. Like there's the 3 different zones on level. You can think of it kind of that way in your stereo mix too. Things that are center, the way your brain perceives that is, I am in this. So anything that's centered is taking up your you space mentally. Then everything else within about 30% left and right is your like immediate area. So that's kind of like, we try to keep our panning. We don't necessarily do hard pans because that can be a little distracting. Unless there's something you want to be distracting. So I want his MD mic to be distracting to me. I'm going to pan that so far over because what it does, it feels like this. Someone talking. It feels like someone talking right in the side of your head. Like he's like right in my ear, and I'm like, okay, thanks, dude, I got it. Like, like we kind of want the MD to function in that like co-pilot or like mom in the car or like whatever, like be sure to turn right or whatever. Like that thing. Like we want that. So we put the monitor or we put MD far right. For me, I need click center because I need that for me, but a lot of people will put click in the far left because they want to have that like speaking into you, like tapping you on the shoulder kind of a vibe. So that's kind of the way to think of it. This is me, these are the things that are around me, and I don't want to pan necessarily more than like, halfway either direction, otherwise stuff starts to get a little too distant. But those are kind of some things. So I think that's pretty much all I contribute.
And real quick, I just wanted to speak in just specifically for like the chapel context. Since the chapel, they have their own little mixers, and a lot of other churches will have like the Avion mixers or those little things where you kind of do your own mix. It's all applies. It's all the same. You just don't have a monitor guy doing it, but it's all the same. You yourself have to be diligent about getting that mix dialed in. And sometimes that might look like you're trying to do it and you're like, well, my drummer's not playing yet, so that might just look like you have to run through your first song. You kind of get it close and you run through your first song and you're just kind of getting stuff dialed while you're running through your first song during practice or whatever it looks like. And so it's the same thing. It all applies. You're just doing it yourself right there. Yeah. I think that's it for proper in-ear mixes. And
sorry, I did have one more thing I totally forgot to mention, and I was trying to remember what it was. So with monitors, less is more. Kind of the idea is it's almost always better. Like you'd be surprised how helpful it can be sometimes. Like everyone's like, well, I need to hear this. I need to hear this. Like sometimes it's better to even just start with a clean slate. Assume you need nothing and just get rid of stuff, because sometimes it feels way better. To start from there and then add in what you need. You'd be surprised how little you actually need.
Yes, I agree with that.
Real quick, and about monitor mixing, we've heard a lot of. So a while ago, we tried to get everybody to like do their own monitor mixes, and the note we got back was, "I don't want to be a mix engineer. I want to be a musician." The goal. So I want to make sure you guys know we don't want you guys to be mix engineers unless you want to be. We want Aaron to be a mix engineer because he's good at that and he can continue to develop in that skill. However, for everyone else that doesn't want to be an engineer, the goal is not to be an engineer. We don't want you guys to feel like you have to like learn this crazy new skill on how to mix and take Waves workshops or whatever. But what we do want to know is you guys interface with this. This is your main reference for how you guys are getting at what you do. We want you guys to know kind of how it works and some tips to make it easier for you guys to hear stuff. So the goal is not to make you guys mix engineers, but just to kind of know how it all works. So.